Friday morning, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to yet another weekly Friday edition of the Alan Fitz podcast, also known as The Chat. Good morning to you. My name is Alan Fitz. I am the host for the program this morning, and welcome into the show. And folks, as always, I want to welcome in our three main listening audiences to the podcast. Number one, those that do agree with what we talk about. They send out positive vibes out on social media to their friends and family. Number two, those that do not quite agree with what we talk about, but they do leave positive criticism, and we definitely appreciate that. We do learn from some of that, actually. And of course, number three, the people that inspire the chat to happen every Friday. Yeah, you got to give them credit somewhere down the line. It's the haters out there. Those that, you could talk about the most positive thing in the world, and yeah, they're definitely going to try to find something wrong with it. And of course, put out lies on social media and things like that. Yeah, those haters out there, they can't see the forest for the trees. And again, they inspire this podcast to happen every Friday. So we're glad that they're tuning in, and we want to welcome everyone into the show live from our studios here in Amarillo, Texas. Folks, before I get started this morning, I want to say that our thoughts and prayers are with those out in the southwest and central portions of the state. This dangerous flash flooding that has been occurring earlier part of this week, from down around Uvalde over to San Antonio, and even as far east as the Houston area, the Texas Hill Country. It is a bad situation. And although we have not seen any of that here in Amarillo proper or any of the counties across the Texas Panhandle, we just want to say that our thoughts and prayers are with you as you are experiencing this catastrophic event. Okay, let's go ahead and get started this morning with the chat. And folks, I want to say that the chat is not always about something positive. It's not always about something negative. It can be adventurous, if that's the right word I should be using. And for that, the topic this morning that we're going to be talking about is an engineering marvel, and it's an unforgettable journey if you've never been across it. The place that we're going to this morning here in the United States is something that is called the Chesapeake Bay Bridge tunnel, that is located out in eastern Virginia and winds up on the eastern shore of Virginia. Now, for those of you that are sitting in front of a computer this morning, whether it's your laptop, your desktop, or maybe an iPad out there, I want you to go to cbbt.com. Again, that is www.cbbt.com. And this is where you will see this engineering marvel that we're going to discuss this morning on the chat. It's 17.6 miles of an engineering innovation without a single stop sign, traffic light, or intersection in sight. Again, it's called the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. Now, before we get started, ladies and gentlemen, there is a Chesapeake Bay Bridge, okay? Now, this is up off of U.S. Highway 50 up near the Washington, D.C. area in northern Virginia, but there's no tunnels on that bridge, and this is what makes this segment of the chat kind of special for you this morning. We want to talk about this engineering marvel, the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel, and folks, I will tell you I've traveled most of the United States. There's 5 states personally that I've never been in the continental United States. Now, we're not talking about outside the continental, which you would have Alaska and Hawaii. But inside the continental United States, there's only 5 states that I have not been to. That's Washington State, Oregon, Idaho, Michigan, and Maine. The other states I have all been to. But back in the year 2000, and this was about 26 years ago, I got to experience this engineering marvel that I never forgot about. It's the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. Now, this is the main link between Norfolk and the southern Virginia Eastern Shore. Now, the Virginia Eastern Shore is made up of only 2 counties. When you come off the bridge, you're in Northampton County, and as you continue north on U.S. Highway 13, you wind up in Accomack County, then into the state of Maryland. But the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel that's not actually its official name. It's actually the Lucius J. Killam Jr. Bridge Tunnel. And as you look at cbbt.com, I'm going to talk a little bit about this engineering marvel. The bridge itself crosses the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay between Delmarva and Hampton Roads in the U.S. Commonwealth of Virginia. Now, it took many years to build this bridge tunnel. Officially, it opened in 1964, and what that did, it replaced the ferries that had operated since, almost 100 years ago, way back into the 1930s. A major project to dualize its bridges was completed in 1999, and just recently, back in 2017, a similar project was started to dualize one of the tunnels. Now, one of the things that I can honestly say about the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel is, in fact, when you get on it, there is no getting off of it. It has 2 service centers, which we're going to talk about later on here in the podcast. And you go underwater not once but twice while you're on the bridge itself. We'll talk about how deep you actually go underwater and how this bridge is actually monitored 24 hours a day around the clock for any possible problems. Now, with 12 miles of bridges and 2 1-mile-long tunnels, the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel is one of only 15 bridge tunnel systems on planet Earth. Okay, we're talking about in the entire world, ladies and gentlemen. And one of 3 in both Hampton Roads and in the United States. The Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel, and we'll call it from here on out the CBBT to shorten it. It carries U.S. Highway 13, which we discussed at the beginning of the podcast. It saves motorists roughly around 95 miles and about an hour and a half on trips between Hampton Roads and the Philadelphia metropolitan area and points north compared with other routes throughout the Washington-Baltimore metropolitan area. Now, they went back about 5 years ago, and they did a survey of exactly how many people, vehicle-wise, is going across the CBBT. And the information that we ascertained here before me is back in January of 2021, just 5 years ago, over 140 million vehicles have gone across the CBBT. Let's talk a little bit about who operates this Chesapeake Bay Bridge. It was built and operated by the Chesapeake Bay Bridge and Tunnel District. It's a political subdivision of the Commonwealth of Virginia, governed by the Chesapeake Bay Bridge and Tunnel Commission, in cooperation with VDOT, which is the Virginia Department of Transportation. Now, you're probably asking yourself, 17.6 miles of bridge, this cost, way beyond figures that you would really have to have a calculator to figure this out. How did they come up with the money? The state of Virginia, how did the state of Virginia come up with this kind of money? Well, its construction itself, that we're talking about the Bay Bridge Tunnel itself, was financed through toll revenue bonds while it was operating, and the maintenance expenses were recovered through the tolls. Now, way back in 2002, a joint legislative audit and review commission, a study commissioned by the Virginia General Assembly, concluded that given the inability of the state to fund future capital requirements of the CBBT, the district and commission should be retained to operate and maintain the bridge tunnel as the toll facility, period. Now, a lot of you may be interpreting, well, the state of Virginia is broke. They couldn't afford it. No, folks, the Commonwealth and these, it's called the state of Virginia, but officially it's actually the Commonwealth of Virginia. This is the old terminology back in the Napoleon time. No, the state of Virginia, or the Commonwealth of Virginia, was not broke. They simply did not have that kind of money to fund such a project. I mean, folks, we're talking 17.6 miles. They didn't build this thing overnight. Again, I talked about earlier in the program that a similarly named Chesapeake Bay Bridge, it crosses the Chesapeake Bay further north, up in Maryland, connecting Annapolis and Kent Island, Maryland. Now, let's talk a little bit about the tunnel sections. They were addressed concerning the bridge failure across critical shipping lanes would block, but not only shipping, but the Navy would have, the United States Navy would have problems with this situation. So that's where the tunnels came in, because this is where the big ships, the U.S. Navy, the cargo, things like that, cross the Chesapeake Bay Bridge. And one of the things that I can honestly say that I have actually seen is flying over the CBBT during the night hours. This is, they have 7 wonders of the world, folks, and I'm sure everybody has heard of the 7 wonders of the world. But personally, I believe the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel should be named number 8. And I'll tell you why I say that here on this podcast. It is because from the air at night, it is something that, unless you honestly truly know what is down below you on the ground, looking down at this structure at night would confuse a college professor in the sense of the word. You see this long strand of lights just out in the middle of nowhere, and then all of a sudden they disappear, and then come back, and then disappear again, and then they reappear and stretch all the way to the eastern shore. And where the lights are disappearing, ladies and gentlemen, is where the tunnels go underwater. Let's talk a little bit about the geographic background of how this came to be. We're going to go way, way back in time to December of 1606. The Virginia Company of London sent an expedition to North America to establish a settlement which was known as the Colony of Virginia. Now, they had to sail it, all right? They sailed across the Atlantic Ocean from England, and they reached the New World at the southern edge of the mouth of what is now known as the Chesapeake Bay. They named the two flanking Virginia points of landscapes like gateposts at the entrance to the long extensive estuary after the sons of their king, who was James the First, the southern Cape Henry, for the eldest and presumed heir. He was known as Henry Frederick, the Prince of Wales, and the northern Cape Charles for his younger brother Charles, the Duke of York, which also became the future King Charles the First. Now, on this sailing expedition, after they reached the colony of Virginia, a few weeks later, they established their first permanent settlement on the southern mainland side of the bay. Now, this was located several miles upstream along a newly named James River at Jamestown on the northern shore on a close-in island for protection, the first permanent settlement which occurred in English North America. Now, across the bay, the area north of Cape Charles was located along what became known later as the Delmarva Peninsula. And let me stop right there and explain what Delmarva is. Okay, this is the abbreviation for three states coming together. It's the first three letters of Delaware, the first three letters of Maryland, and the Virginia abbreviation of VA. This is Delmarva. This is how the Delmarva Peninsula was named, ladies and gentlemen. As it's bordered the Atlantic Ocean to its east, the region became known as Virginia and neighboring Virginia, or rather the Maryland Eastern Shore. As the entire colony grew, the bay was the main transportation obstacle for exchanges with Virginia mainland on the western shore. Now, one of the 8 original shires of Virginia, Accomack Shire, was established there in 1634, eventually becoming the 2 counties of modern times. Again, Accomack County in the north and Northampton County to the south. In comparison to mainland regions, commerce and growth was limited by the need to cross the bay. So in other words, what they're saying is 350 some years ago, from Norfolk, Virginia, to the eastern shore was only accessible by boat. Now, consequently, little industry base grew there, with the oceanfront peninsula staying predominantly rural with small towns and villages oriented toward life on the waters, and most residents made their living by farming and working as watermen, both on the bay, locally known now as the Bayside, and they call the Atlantic Ocean the Seaside. Let's go back a little bit more into history before the CBBT was built. Now, remember, they sailed from England over here to the colony of Virginia. And when they made that landfall for the first 350 years, the only thing that provided the primary transportation were ships and ferries. Now, from the early 1930s until the year 1954, the Virginia Ferry Corporation, also known as VFC, it was a privately owned public service company, managed to schedule vehicular car, bus, and truck and passenger ferry service between the Virginia Eastern Shore and Princess Anne County, which is now part of the city of Virginia Beach, which went to the mainland western shore in the Southampton Roads area. Now, this system, it connected portions of U.S. Highway 13. That was known as the Little Creek Cape Charles Ferry. I like that name. In 1951, the northern terminus in Delmarva was relocated to a location now within, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Chesapeake State Park. Now, despite an expanding fleet of large and modern ships by the Virginia Ferry Corporation in the 1940s and early 1950s, which were eventually capable as many as 90 one-way trips per day, the crossing suffered delays due to heavy traffic and inclement weather. Well, folks, I think they got tired of it. So in 1954, which was then known as the Virginia General Assembly, created a political subdivision in the Chesapeake Bay Ferry District and its governing body, known as the Chesapeake Bay Ferry Commission. Now, that commission was authorized to acquire the private ferry corporation through bond financing to improve the existing VFC ferry service. But when the CBBT opened, much of the ferry equipment and vessels that were used by the Little Creek Cape Charles ferry service was sold and moved north to be redeployed to start the Cape May Lewis ferry across the 17-mile mouth of the Delaware Bay between Cape May, New Jersey and Lewis, Delaware. It still serves transit needs, but the number of pleasure trip passengers increased as the coastal bend resorts developed and grew crowded with vacationers in the next decade, partly due to the improved, swifter transportation with highway, bridge, and tunnel access in the region of those three states. Again, that's called Delmarva, Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia. Now, let me stop right there, and I had mentioned a town. For those of you that may not know this, I had mentioned a town, Lewis, Delaware, Lewes, and I just want everybody to know, for those of you that don't know, Delaware is the first state of the United States, and Lewis, Delaware is very historic, for those of you that may not know this, and I've been there many, many years ago. Lewis, Delaware is the first city created in the first state of the United States. A lot of history in Lewis, Delaware. Okay, so getting back to the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel topic here on the podcast. So, the Virginia General Assembly, back in 1956, authorized the Ferry Commission to conduct feasible studies for the construction of a fixed crossing. That conclusion of the study indicated that vehicular crossing actually was feasible. Consideration was given to service between the eastern shore and both the Peninsula and Southampton roads, and eventually the shortest route, extending between the eastern shore and a point in Princess Anne County at the Chesapeake Beach, which is just east of Little Creek, west of Lynnhaven Inlet, was selected. An option to also provide a fixed crossing link to Hampton and the Peninsula, that, ladies and gentlemen, was not pursued. Okay, let's talk a little bit about how the money was raised in the original construction to the CBBT. In the mid-1960s, the Chesapeake Bay Ferry Commission sold $200 million in toll revenue bonds. Now, 2 years ago, that would be equivalent to $1.62 billion. And they sold these toll revenue bonds to private investors, and the proceeds were used to finance the construction of the bridge tunnel. Funds collected by future tolls were pledged to pay the principal and interest on the bonds, and no local, state, or federal tax funds were ever used in the construction of this project. Now, the construction contracts were awarded to a consortium of Tidewater Construction Corporation and Merritt Chapel and Scott Corporation. The steel superstructure for the high-level bridges near the north end and the crossing were fabricated by the American Bridge Division of United States Steel Corporation. Basically what I'm saying here, we don't have anything foreign going on, okay? Everything was United States material made. Construction of the bridge tunnel began in October of 1960 after a 6-month process of assembling necessary equipment from worldwide sources. Now, let's talk about these tunnels for a moment, because the tunnels are really what makes this thing so spectacular, especially if you get the chance to ever drive across it. The tunnels were constructed using a technique refined by old Singstad with the Baltimore Harbor Tunnel, whereby a large ditch was first dug for each tunnel, into which was lowered into a prefabricated tunnel sections, which were cable suspended from overhead barges. Now, the interior chambers were filled with water to lower the sections. The sections then aligned, bolted together by divers. The water was then pumped out, and the tunnels were finally covered with earth. Now, the construction was accomplished under the severe conditions imposed by nor'easters, hurricanes, and the unpredictable Atlantic Ocean. During the Ash Wednesday storm of 1962, much of the partially completed work and a major piece of the custom-built equipment, a pile driver barge that was named the Big D, all that was destroyed. Unfortunately, 7 workers were killed at various times during the construction. In April of 1964, 42 months, that's almost 4 years, ladies and gentlemen, after the construction began, the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel opened to traffic, and the Virginia ferry service was disconnected. Now, back in 1999, they did something that was called bridge dualization, because the way originally the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel was built, it was one-way traffic, okay? It was one way into the tunnel, one way out of the tunnels. So back in 1999, at a cost of $197 million, new parallel 2-lane trestle ties were built, both to alleviate traffic and for safety reasons. Immediately after the completion of those trestle ties, traffic was diverted to them, and the original trestle ties and roadway underwent a $20 million retrofit, repairing the wear and tear of 35 years of service and upgrading certain features such as repaving the road surface. The older portion of the facility was then reopened on April the 19th of 1999. Now, they do have something called the Thimble Shoal Tunnel dualization, and this is projected to occur in about 2 years in 2028. Now, back in 2013, the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel Commission approved a project to construct a second tunnel under the Thimble Shoal Channel for an estimated cost of a whopping $756 million. Now, that project received 3 bids, all of which would use tunnel boring machines. The winning company was German-based Herrenkick, whose machine was 325 feet long. The machine, named Chessie in a naming contest, was capable of moving forward through soil at 2.4 inches per minute, or about 50 feet a day. At that rate, it's estimated that the second tunnel could be dug within about a year. Now, that construction work began in 2017 to prepare the location of the tunnels. The affected pier, shop, and restaurant were closed in September of 2017, and this is I had mentioned earlier when we started the podcast on this subject, there's basically service centers. They're an island out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and we're going to get into that here in just a few minutes. But all that had to shut down because the machine boring process was taking place. Machine was built in 2018 after a few delays and was shipped to Virginia. After boring, the machine will also added circular concrete segments which will be delivered into the tunnel via mine cars one at a time. That construction was scheduled to finish in 2023, and it did. And by August of 2022, the second tunnel at the Thimble Show had been delayed still delayed to 2027. And as of right now, the project has been delayed to 2028. Okay, so they're looking at $755,987,318 to bore that tunnel. The construction is estimated to start on October the 1st of 2017, and it did complete in 2023. The Chesapeake Channel Tunnel dualization is projected to complete somewhere between 2035 and 2040. They say here it would possibly open for traffic in late 2040, assuming there are no setbacks or delays. What they're trying to do on that is to make it a 4-lane highway all the way across. And to be able to do that and to get it into the tunnels and things like that, it's going to take some time to do that. Now, let's talk a little bit about operations, maintenance, and regulations on the Chesapeake Bay Bridge tunnel. If I remember correctly, when I went across it back in 2000, I believe it was $15 to cross, or $10 rather, to cross it. No matter how many people you had in the vehicle, ladies and gentlemen, you could cross it for $10 a vehicle. Now, there is toll collection facilities which are located at both ends of the facility, both over on the Virginia Eastern Shore and at Norfolk. And tolls are paid in each direction. Now, the information here that I've got, and this was 2 years ago, back in 2024, the tolls for cars, and this was without pulling trailers, traveling along the CBBT is $16 for off-peak season, $21 for the peak times, which peak times here say Friday through Sunday, May 15th to September 15th. Now, should a car make a return trip within 24 hours of the first, the second trip cost $6 if they're pulling a trailer, $1 if it's off-peak season, but only if you have Easy Pass. Cash or card payers must pay full fare. Now, motorcycles pay the same as toll as car without trailers. All other vehicles are charged based on size and purpose and are not subject to return trip discounts. All tolls must be either paid in cash, debit, credit card, or script tickets issued by the CBBT or via the electronic Easy Pass toll collection. Now, the bridge tunnel itself began accepting Smart Tag Easy Pass payments way back on November the 1st of 2007. Now, they've got safety concerns on this bridge, folks, especially for the wind. Strong winds in the past have blown over certain vehicles, created major traffic delays, even having to shutting the bridge down. Some vehicles to this date are still banned when the wind speeds exceed 40 miles an hour. Level 3 wind restrictions are in place when the wind exceeds 65 miles an hour, which bans all traffic. Now, truck drivers out there, CDL truck drivers, hauling hazardous materials and compressed gases require various restrictions and inspections to safeguard the tunnels. And I can understand why the CBT would want to do that. Somebody gets in the bottom of the tunnel and there's an explosion takes place or something like that. Well, then they've got even more problems. Now, Both of these tunnels have a height limit of 13 foot 6 inches and an overall truck height, or rather an over-height truck. This is a truck driver carrying a high load. And this was back in April of 2007. Severely damaged the tunnel. He tried to go under the tunnel. It was a high load. The repairs took 3 weeks. They had to shut the entire bridge system down between Norfolk and the Eastern Shore because of that. Should police activities, accidents, or closures stop traffic from moving freely? The gates, both on the Eastern Shore side and in Norfolk, prevent drivers from entering and then being forced to either back up within the narrow space or wait too long in the middle of the bridge tunnel. And I can understand them doing that. There's some people that, and I don't know exactly what they call these type of people, they get out there and they have to stop on that bridge and all they can see is water. Look 360 around, they can't see any land, they begin to panic. This can cause somebody to go into a severe medical condition, cause somebody to have a heart attack. So those safety measures were put into place in case Chesapeake Bay Bridge tunnel police are conducting some type of activity on the bridge. There is no access, for those of you that want to put this on your bucket list, there's no access on the bridge for bicyclists. It's just too dangerous. But the bridge does itself offer a shuttle van for $15. Now, under Virginia law, it is mandatory that the bridge be checked and serviced every 5 years. Since servicing the bridge takes about 5 years, the process is a continuous cycle. And I had mentioned this at the beginning of the podcast, folks, where there is continued monitorization on the Chesapeake Bay Bridge tunnel 24 hours a day. And this not only is on the bridge, but it's also in the water. They have divers that work around the clock. And it's not going to just be 2 or 3 divers that have to swim 17 miles. There's hundreds of divers that are in the water. Not all times of the day and night, because you have the heavy ship traffic, the U.S. Navy, and things of that nature that is crossing over where the tunnels are at. But they do have divers that go down day and night, or that are in the water, and they are constantly looking for even the minorest of a problem, of possibly an air leak. Anything that can be imagined that can go wrong is immediately addressed. The structurization is addressed of the bridges. So yes, it's a continuous 5-year process. It never stops day or night. This is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week continuous monitoring of this engineering marvel that crosses the Chesapeake Bay of the Atlantic Ocean. And it is inside both of the tunnels. At the very bottom of the tunnels, there is an individual that is placed down there at 8 hours a day that is in a little, what I would call a little picket booth. He does have radio, telephone, and other emergency contacts. Should something go wrong in the bridge, he's basically, those people are put down in that area in case there is an accident in the bridge. They can report it immediately to the authorities, the police, the tunnel police, and have that shut down, get wreckers, ambulances, whatever they need in there as quickly as possible. Because, you know, if they don't put somebody down in there and didn't think about doing that, they could have an accident at the bottom of the tunnel, and then other traffic goes in and the domino effect begins. So the individual that is down in the base, the bottom of each tunnel, serves a very serious purpose in continuous communication with the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Authority and the police that everything is A-OK for crossing down underwater into these tunnels. Again, they are trained to immediately report any accidents, and that is where the tunnels, the roadway, the bridge itself is immediately shut down, and emergency services provided until everything is A-OK. It receives the green light to reopen the bridge. Now, the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Authority Bay Bridge Tunnel rather, is the only automobile transportation facility in Virginia with its own police department. By original charter from the state, it has the authority to enforce the laws of Virginia. Here's another thing that is good to know about the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. Emergency call boxes are spaced at half-mile intervals. This is for the traveling public. If so much as somebody has a blowout, a flat tire, while traveling on the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel, a passing motorist can get to an emergency call box and call the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel Police to report that. This is considered a serious safety violation, even a blown out tire, ladies and gentlemen, because it can cause an accident. They can't get off that bridge. They're on water. The police act immediately. And yes, I'm going to go ahead and throw this up, but the police department out there has got a few names that people have decided to give them. Some people refer to them as the Seagull Police because there's a lot of seagulls out naturally in salt water following the boats and things like that. Folks, you can call them what you want to call them. If you want to call them the Seagull Police, well, they're not Seagull Police. They are a official state law enforcement agency that primarily their purpose is safety on that bridge. I mean, you got to remember this thing is 17.6 miles long. There's another bridge that comes to mind. It's a little bit longer than the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel itself, but it's down in southern Louisiana. And I'm sure everybody that's traveled Interstate 10 has gone across that bridge. It's like 22.8 miles, the Atchafalaya Bridge, running between Breaux Bridge, Louisiana, and Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Well, this is primarily the same thing, with the exception there is one exit on the Atchafalaya Bay Bridge that goes into Mariquois, Louisiana. And for those of you that may not know this, Mariquois is Cajun for mosquito. But it's a little bit different on the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel because they do have service islands. And we're going to talk about that here in just a moment. That you can stop, get a snack, go to the bathroom, things of that nature. And we'll get into that here in just a minute if I have time to do it. We are already very deep into this podcast, and looking at my timer here, I've only got about 10 or 15 minutes maximum that I can talk about. One thing that I do want to talk about is some incidences that did occur on the bridge itself. But before I do that, let's get back to the length of this bridge again. The Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel is 17.6 miles long from shore to shore, crossing what is essentially an ocean strait. Excuse me, including land approach highways. The overall facility is 23 miles from toll plaza to toll plaza. And despite its length, there is a height difference of only 6 inches from the south to the north end of the bridge tunnel. So it only goes a half a foot higher on one side. Let's talk about those two islands right quick. There's artificial islands, each approximately are 5.25 acres, and they're located at each end of the two tunnels. Now, between North Channel and Fisherman's Inlet, the facility crosses at grade over Fisherman's Island, which is a barrier island that is part of the eastern shore of Virginia National Wildlife Refuge, which is administered actually by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And the columns that support the bridge's truss tiles, which they're simply called piles, would stretch for 100 miles if placed end to end. Roughly, ladies and gentlemen, listen to this. If you placed the piles end to end, they would roughly go the distance between New York City and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Let's talk about a few incidences while we have some time left about some things that have happened on the bridge since it's been built. Since the bridge opened in 1960, it's been closed 3 times for multiple days after being struck by watercraft. In December of 1967, coal barge Mohawk broke anchor and struck the bridge, closed it down for 2 weeks for repair work. January 21st of 1970, the USS Yancey, which is also known as 93, that was a United States Navy attack cargo ship carrying 250 people, was at anchor near the bridge tunnel. Now, during a gale with winds gusting in excess of 50 miles an hour, the Yancey dropped its anchors and hit the bridge stern first, knocking out 375-foot segment of the trestle. There were no vehicles on the bridge at the time of the impact. No one was injured. It took them 42 days to replace that damaged area. The Navy, in turn, offered free shuttle service for commuters using helicopters and LCUs while it was being repaired. Then in 1972, the bridge was again impacted by a barge that had broken loose, closing it for 2 weeks while the span was repaired on it. Less significant strikes have caused shorter closures while the affected structures were inspected, most recently a 4-hour closure after a barge strike occurred in June of 2011. Now, just last year, and this is information that we did ascertain from the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel Authority. This is official documentation that came from the police department out there. Last year, and I guess they have not done any other surveys or any other updates because this is what they sent us. As of February of last year, and this was in 2025, there's been 19 incidences of vehicles running off of the bridge into the water. Now, back in 2017, a truck plowed through the barriers into the sea below. The driver was rescued but died en route to the hospital. In December of 2020, a dairy truck crashed through the guardrail near mile marker 14. Witnesses said that the driver was drifting in the water. It was estimated to be about 45 degrees, but they could not rescue him. They couldn't get to him. Despite an extensive search, he remained missing until April of 2021, when his body washed up over 100 miles south at Cape Hatteras National Seashore between Salvo and Avon. A second truck following the dairy truck encountered strong wind gusts just prior to that accident blew that truck into the other lane. There was no injuries reported from that occurrence. Talking about the depth of the tunnels. Now, the Thimble Shoal Channel Tunnel, according to this documentation here, is estimated to be roughly at 100 feet deep. The other tunnel, about 115 feet deep. And you go through it, and for those of you that don't know this, and I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit off subject with this, my stepbrother-in-law, who lives back in East Texas, at one time was a certified diver. I'm not going to reveal his name completely, but his first name is Daryl. He is married to my stepsister. And I remember Daryl telling me this many, many years ago, and this is one of the reasons a lot of people may not know, but when you're diving and you get below 25 foot in the water, as you begin to come up, you have to go in stages. If you come up too quickly, the nitrogen can form into the bloodstream, and of course you get the bends because of this. Now, a lot of people probably are asking the question, well, if you're going 100 foot down into the Thimble Shoal Channel and coming out, why is it not having any effect on your body? It's, well, basically because you're not sitting still. A diver has the pressurization on his body once he gets to 25 foot and lower. The lower you go, the heavier the pressure is on the body. You get too deep, it can kill you. You come up too fast, it can kill you. With the example being said of the Thimble Shoal Channel Tunnel, where you first go underwater if you're traveling northbound on US 13 coming out of Norfolk, Virginia. And I do remember this myself. The only thing I can remember, ears popped. Okay, my ears popped a couple of times as I was descending upward. But it's a little bit different. Vehicles, for an example, if they had an accident at the bottom of the tunnel, the person basically would be protected as long as the tunnel did not fill up with water. The air pressurization is different than it would be if you were submerged in water. So, for those of you that might be a little bit claustrophobic on this, that want to attempt to go through the tunnels, you may have mechanical issues at the bottom of the tunnel, I can assure you that, yes, you are underwater, but you would not be affected per se if you were physically in the water itself, okay? There is oxygen, free-flowing air that runs through the tunnels from the atmosphere, so you are protected from the pressure of the water. Again, you may experience some ear popping as you descend upward from the base of the tunnel. And I think, and I've crossed the Chesapeake Bay Bridge tunnel many, many times in my lifetime, and I only experienced ear popping maybe twice. So it's not something that you're going to get down in there, and let's say you have a mechanical breakdown, you are going to be addressed immediately. They're going to get help to you. They're going to shut down the roadway to bring emergency help to you and get you on your way. There may be some questions out there. How safe is it to actually cross this bridge? Well, like I said earlier in the podcast, and this was just 5 years ago, and it's back in January of 2021, 100 and over, actually, ladies and gentlemen, over 140 million vehicles have crossed the Chesapeake Bay Bridge tunnel. So yeah, it's very safe. Again, it's It's constantly being monitored. It's constantly being maintained. 17.6 miles across. It takes from shore to shore. It takes 5 years for that maintenance to take place. So basically, and I'll say it again, basically it's, 5 years complete, they're starting right back over. Not a day or night passes that it's not being inspected for your safety in crossing. Before we close out the podcast, I just want to say that one thing that I do remember, and this is completely off subject from the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel, is that when we crossed from Norfolk, and again, this was back in the year 2000, some 26 years ago, I remember I do not remember the name of the place that I stopped at, and if I could remember it, I'd give these people a free plug, absolutely. I don't even know, they may not even be in business. They all may be dead and gone, I don't know. But we did stop when we got off the bridge and picked up a Virginia ham. Let me tell you something, folks. I don't know about now, but 26 years ago, those Virginia hams are pretty good. And I'm pretty sure that they still have some areas out there, convenience stores that you can stop at and get a ham. But again, you have two chances once you get on the bridge. You do have two chances to stop. They do have inside where the islands are at before you go into the tunnels. They do have snack bars. They have restroom facilities. And they even have literature that talks about, just like we've talked about this morning on the podcast, about the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. It is an absolute engineering marvel. If you've never been across it, put it on your bucket list because it is an unforgettable journey. 17.6 miles of engineering innovation without a single stop sign, traffic light, or intersection in sight. Coming up next Friday, we're going to go over to the eastern side of the Texas Panhandle, and we're going to talk about something that has been over near Canadian for many, many years. For those of you that have traveled up U.S. Highway 83 from Wheeler, the Shamrock area, up to Canadian, you see it on the right side of the highway. He's basically up on top of a Texas Panhandle mountain. Well, it's basically, folks, it's the Cap Rock, but it's a mountain. He's solid green, and he looks down on you. It's odd. A-U-D. The dinosaur that oversees U.S. Highway 83 in Hemphill County. We're going to take a trip to Hemphill County near Canadian, Texas on our next podcast. And we're going to talk about how odd came to be near Canadian. And with that being said, that will wrap up this weekly Friday edition of the podcast. It is Friday. Get out, enjoy your day, have a wonderful weekend. And my friends, until we meet again next Friday, right here on this YouTube channel, this is Alan Fitz saying bye for now.